I'm delighted to have Duncan Leathley, the Area Sales Director, and also Ryan Pearson, the Aftermarket and Digital Europe Lead from the Water Utilities Division at Grundfos Pumps. Welcome to British Water's Thought Leadership Series, Talking on Water.
Delighted to be here, thank you.
Hi, Lila.
Thank you. So before we get stuck into all the questions, can you tell me a bit about Grundfos?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important thing for everyone to know about Grundfos is that Grundfos is still a family-owned business from Denmark, founded in 1945. But actually today we're run by a foundation, the Paul Jensen Foundation, named after our founder. That means that as an organisation, the profits that Grundfos generate are redirected into the business for the purposes of R&D. That's to pioneer solutions for what we feel are our societal obligations. That is around the world's climate agenda and around the world's water security agenda. So we're here to help pioneer solutions to transform water for the world, and specifically in the 4 key areas we operate, which are commercial building services, domestic building services, the industrial sector, and most importantly for us is the water utility sector.
Thanks, Ryan, and welcome, Lila. We're at our Leighton Buzzard head offices here for the UK. We're really pleased to have British Water with us today and yourself, and talk around our digital solutions, our thoughts on digital, and also talk a little bit more about our water utilities division.
Thank you. So focusing now on digital innovation, what role can digital innovation play in transforming the sector in PR24 and AMP8?
It's a really good question, and as we know, when we think about Ofwat and the challenges that Ofwat are driving down to the water companies, such as climate change, drought, variable river flows, etc., all these challenges really present an opportunity in the digital space and for digital solutions. What we also tend to think about is Ofwat and their desire to look at strategies for longer term. For the PR24 and for the AMP periods, they're looking at a 25-year outlook. So for us as a business in the water utility sector, it's vitally important that we think about how we can drive that digital solution and technology into the sector. Ryan.
For Grundfos, digital innovation has been a central pillar of our research and development since really 2013, where we created a specific arm of our R&D division focused on, emerging digital trends. We've been very active in and around thought leadership in the digital sphere in the UK water sector specifically. And really trying to identify where we can make an impact with our solutions that we're developing as an organisation. It's interesting to see the development of the last 10 years in the UK water sector. I think particularly when you look at the development that you've seen in other sectors, other comparable sectors, for example, Ofgem, they very clearly laid out a smart grid route map back now, I think in 2013. I think they laid that out. The regulator they set out a policy which allowed them to stretch their investment horizons over longer periods to enable that transition. So I think that what we're seeing for PR24 certainly in the Ofwat consultancy document is really a step change in aligning to a similar approach to what Ofwat have done. As Duncan mentioned, we're seeing the real thought around how we can in the water industry stretch those investment time horizons beyond the traditional 5-year AMP to enable much larger strategic route maps. But for sure, one of the challenges that water utilities will face when looking at PR24 and AMP8 is how they create baselines and benchmarks with the data they have available to them today to be able to structure those investment profiles in a way that can show a return in growth of productivity or service levels or meeting any of the challenges that Duncan set out around service levels, environmental impacts. Affordability is obviously a huge concern for lots of water companies at the moment, and not least the consumers they serve. So Ofwat, I think, have laid out really clear ambition to move much better, move much faster, bring simplicity and bring speed into the way that water companies are able to innovate effectively to certainly come much more in line with what we see in other comparable sectors.
So just staying on that point then. So obviously Ofwat's got a real key focus on open data, and wants there to be much more open data coming through from water companies so that companies like yourselves can innovate. So again, so how do you sort of see Grundfos's role in that?
We have actually a number of data as a service solutions. So just to tell everyone what data as a service means, that means where supply chain organisations are able to offer data management type solutions. That's to bring data out of organisations, to clean it, to enrich it, to focus on things like data quality. And so that's a really powerful thing once you're able to kind of bring all that hidden dark data into the surface. You're able to then do stuff with it. You're able to potentially create much more value that was previously hidden without actually having to invest in anything, because the data's there and the value potential is there. It's about capturing that value, and at the moment, one of the and Ofwat recognise that, because it's a well-trodden path that in itself isn't innovative. As I said, other sectors have been doing this for decades now, so this isn't anything new. And it's great that Ofwat have recognised that open data is a really powerful thing to really enable that value capture that's ready to be harnessed. What we're seeing practically is that there's still a lot of reluctance on the water company side to be totally transparent with that data, and understandably so, because there are potential misuses of all data, of course. So there's still that I guess push and pull. Ofwat on one side, the water companies on the other, in really understanding what does open data mean. Exactly. Right?
And what kind of data should they be releasing?
Exactly that. And we've seen, I think recently with Thames Water, and I know that South West Water are also moving to a similar model where they have open source data on their EDMs, right, on their pollutions and spills, and it's great that we're sharing that with the broader stakeholder community, but that in itself has then created another raft of problems that the water company now has to deal with, right? So it's a complex thing, and I think the shift in attitude from Ofwat is a great one, but I also understand the reluctance on the water company side, because you don't know what new challenges you might bring into the sphere, right?
And I think as well, if we consider, when we think about Ofwat and we think about innovation and we think about their longer term strategy, which is really great to see. So it's wonderful that Ofwat aren't looking at that 5-year cycle and are looking longer term than that. For people like Grundfos, where when we consider the supply chain and how we manage the supply chain, that longer term innovation view is so much more positive. It really does allow us as a business to fully develop the solutions, and importantly, not just take them from trials. It's important that we're able to scale these solutions, that we're able to bring them into long-term solutions, and not trials that over a period of time don't necessarily provide or drive any incremental value.
Yeah, I completely understand that. And that actually brings me naturally to my next question, because in terms of digital innovations, where do you see the key blockers are in terms of bringing digital innovations through into the water industry?
I mean, certainly, one of the big things that we think about and we're aware of is cyber security. We know that it's a huge concern and it's a huge risk for water companies. Cyber security is one of the areas where they have to look at and focus. We know that there's published information where a particular water company has had some cyber security issues and some challenges, and we can understand that. We really do understand how the water companies have their concerns and risks, but we feel that we're addressing that. If we talk about innovation and very much to what Ryan has just been saying, I think at times the word innovation is potentially perhaps overused, and certainly when we're talking about concerns such as cyber security, really what we're thinking there is trying to provide water companies with some comfort, with some confidence that the risks aren't there. And really at times we do wonder whether we should be talking about knowledge transfer as opposed to innovation. Because to Ryan's point, a lot of the technology, a lot of the architecture that we do see around cyber security has been used elsewhere. And perhaps dare I say it, there is that need of leap of faith from the water companies to trust in what the supply chain are providing and offering them, and they're expecting in terms of innovation. They demand the innovation. We know we have to have it to drive the industry and the sector forward. So, sometimes perhaps the water companies need to consider that it's knowledge transfer and not necessarily innovation.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And if you look at that and this is where the challenge comes in for us as innovators around the commercial side of it. What water companies or the water sector more generally, and this is again broader than the UK, what they see as an introductory development innovation, we often have as a mature offering. Right, we've done the innovation, we've done the kind of the growth cycle of that product, and we're now into a maturity phase. And what is normal in many other sectors that we work in and we sell into is then still innovation from a water company perspective. And the challenge comes then is if you innovate specifically for the water company and the uptake is slow, then the water companies will never feel the benefit of that innovation, and innovators will ultimately turn elsewhere.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned inertia earlier, and I think one of the key challenges that water companies have is that obviously the fact is that they're looking after a resource which has a public health value, if you like, and importance, and you might be working in other sectors where necessarily somebody might not necessarily die from drinking water, or if no one's going to drink oil, are they, a glass of oil. So I think working in that kind of environment, it does lend itself to maybe a slower pace of innovation potentially. But I do think that, we're at a stage now where everybody kind of has to acknowledge that we can't do the same things in the same way for AMP8 exactly and beyond. Right. So I think one of the things that I've been hearing from you both is around the key thing is to listen, to collaborate, to just be open to new ideas. And as you said earlier, to the particular experiences that you can bring as a supply chain company, having worked in other sectors or found out from other sort of industries, and bring them into the water sector.
Absolutely. If we consider our other divisions, as Ryan said earlier, commercial building services, domestic building services and industry, if we consider those divisions and the areas and the sectors and the space that they're working within, they are working in some of those areas where perhaps that innovation has gone at a quicker and a faster pace, and that is where we're bringing our learning. We're bringing that learning in from other divisions, and as Ryan alluded to, not just from the UK, not just from Europe, but globally. We are a global organisation, and we can very much bring and apply that learning and what we've discovered and what we've found. So it's really important.
Brilliant, thank you. So I'm now going to turn to Ofwat's performance commitments, the ODIs. Obviously, water companies have to fulfil these, and there are new ones as well that are coming up in AMP8. So where do you see digital innovation can assist the water companies to deliver those?
I think that one's definitely for you, Ryan.
Yeah, I think that from our side, actually as an organisation, as a foundation, our objectives are very well aligned to that of the regulator, right? So the ODIs that they set around water quality, water affordability, PCC, per capita consumption, these are all very well aligned to how we're trying to transform the world as an organisation. So our products and solutions that we often bring to market are very well aligned to those performance commitments. And I think that from our side, then the solutions that we bring to market, we feel can really help the water sector on that journey to deliver against the ODIs the regulator is setting. I think it's challenging for water companies in an environment which is changing at a faster rate than I can ever remember in my lifetime. In 3 years we've had inflation double digit. We've had a pandemic, once in a lifetime pandemic. We've got a war in Europe for the first time in probably 2 generations. So all of these factors. Energy costs is another one that it's understandable how all those things can really challenge where we saw ODIs perhaps 4 years ago when we were in the PR19 phase to where we see ODIs today. And we see from the progress reports from Ofwat that it is the case that lots of water companies are struggling to meet some of their performance commitments set out in PR19 for AMP7. But our view, I think, is that our solutions offer an opportunity for water companies to take a different approach, to look at different solutions, look at maybe new ways of doing things and new ways of making an impact. And I think to coin another expression from Ofwat in the PR24 consultation paper, is that service improvements don't always mean more money. Right? And I think that we're very much in that space, particularly with lots of our digital solutions. Right, is that these things don't always cost you more money as a company. The outcome of the digital solutions and particularly those digital solutions around data management, is that actually we're just harnessing value that already exists. Right. Yeah. So the potential is there. Yes, you have to make an investment to unleash that potential. Once you've realised the potential, the returns, the savings should more than offset any investment cost in upstarting a solution to deliver on a commitment. So I think for us and particularly with our digital portfolio, is we're very much aligned with Ofwat in that sense. So we the service improvements are there. We just need to extract the value. It's untapped. And I think that just needs a little culture shift, a small culture shift, some behaviour changes, some appetite to perhaps consider problems differently, right? Yeah. So I think these are opportunities for water companies to really embrace the supply chain, because we're not here just to have a transactional relationship. We're here to really have a transformational relationship. Our purpose, as stated in our all our corporate publications now, is to we want to transform water. Right, our objectives are the same. So for sure, it's worth more collaboration, I think, on these issues and seeing where we can really help make an impact on those ODIs.
And if you sort of think about our rich history in the water sector, in the water space, we're talking a lot about digital technology today. Grundfos has got a rich history in that collaboration, acting as a partner to water companies, working with consultants. It's something that we want to do. We drive our business model where we have that direct interaction with the water companies. That's where we want to talk. That's where we want to try and influence and add value. And, it's all part of the Grundfos ethos and strategy. We recently rephased, rechanged our view and our outlook as a Grundfos business. Our new tagline is possibility in every drop. And when we think about some of these innovations, not just in the digital space, that's absolutely where we think we play. We want to see and drive the value and possibility in every drop.
I like that strap line. I'm going to remember that one. Thank you. I mean, it's a really good discussion, and I also want to kind of turn to net zero, because obviously as a supply chain company, you can help the water sector on its journey to reducing carbon emissions. So how do you see yourselves in that space?
So, I mean, if I lead on that, net zero, as we know, it's most certainly a target and an aspiration that people will have to achieve. We as a business, and again in our R&D, we're constantly looking at how we drive innovation through efficiency in everything that we offer. Certainly, Ryan will talk in a second about the digital space, but certainly when we consider our traditional pump portfolios, we continue to look at our R&D, we continue to innovate in terms of how we can drive energy efficiency out of the pumps that we manufacture. Once again, when we talk about partnering and collaborating with water companies, we think about the life of an asset and a pump, and we know within water companies now there's a larger drive to look to repair as to necessarily replace, and we know that there's an impact there. So across the broad part of our water business and our water utility division, we are constantly looking at how we can achieve that net zero. From our factories as well, we have some significant commitments from our factories globally in achieving our own net zero targets as Grundfos as a business, which we see great improvement year on year. But Ryan, on the digital space.
Yeah, I think again, for me, Ofgem is a really good place to start. Okay, so that they recognised very early on that to achieve net zero really requires that they take a full circular economy view of what they're delivering, right? So obviously they have energy inputs, energy storage, you have a grid, and you have consumers, right? And to really understand how you can get to net zero, you need to understand the process end to end. And their smart grid route map that they set out really put some really good level of detail of the steps they need to take. The thing I particularly like about it is the smart meter rollout, right? I think that's a really, really clever way of engaging with stakeholders to get people thinking about how much electricity they're using, how much heating they're using, and even going now as far as times, can you turn your electricity off for between 5 and 6 and we'll give you an extra £3 kickback, and really so that they've got the whole kind of ecosystem of stakeholders really engaged on the same objective. I think that for the water industry, if we really want to get to net zero in a realistic time frame, then a similar approach needs to be taken. We see a lot of what I would call as kind of micro transactions. We're going to electrify 50 vans. We're going to install some more efficient assets. But ultimately we need much more transformational activities to get to a net zero position. And digital technology is a logical step change. For sure, Ofgem saw the ability to deploy IoT and data as a service and AI and machine learning on their grid as the kind of core enabler for the behaviour change across all of the stakeholders, right? Because smart meters is the tool that enables the behaviour change at the consumers, right? AI is a tool that enables the grid operators to flex where they can bring in the energy supply from. So it might be wind, it might be tidal, it might be solar, whatever time, right? AI allows them to do that. That is the enabler. So digital technology, I think, and digital innovation is absolutely the enabler, but we need a long-term view of how we're going to engage that entire stakeholder community, right? I think that's another reason why the smart meter rollout in water has somewhat stalled, and we're still very much we were talking about smart meters in 2010. In the water industry, and we're still doing smart meter pilots in 2023, and still trying to really understand how we can capture that value. And I think that's largely because we take each of these projects in isolation and talk about it as one thing, but it's not. It needs to be an end-to-end,
like a holistic
cross-stakeholder approach. Exactly. And
they have kind of started it. I mean, Water UK have a route map to net zero, which the water company signed up to. Which actually British Water supported. But yes, it's how that then is translated, because obviously each water company then has their way of delivering on that targets. But I think we just need to keep that kind of holistic approach with supply chain input.
Correct.
Which I think is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
And from a from a consumer, to your point, Ryan, these days for electricity or gas, you can have an app on your smartphone, or you can have a monitor sitting in the kitchen, and it will tell you how much electricity or gas you're consuming, what the actual cost is per day, per month, per hour. Can you actually get an app on your smartphone to see how much water you've consumed in a day?
I think to that point, I was, and this is probably a really terrible admission on my side, but I was reading about the per capita consumption ODI recently, and I thought, okay, well, per capita consumption, that involves me, right? I'm an integral part of my local water authority in achieving their PCC, right? Have I ever considered PCC in terms of water? No, not as a home user. I put my washing machine on when I want, I shower when I want, put my taps on when I want. Do I consider my electricity consumption and my gas consumption when I've got the meter there in the house? Absolutely, I do. I'm an engaged stakeholder, and that difference, although totally wrong from an outlook perspective, and I know it's limitations in terms of my cognitive dissonance, right? But that's reality. That's where we're at with it.
Maybe if you knew how much it cost you to heat that water for your showers, your bath, then there might be a bit more of a connection, because that's something that actually we're exploring with a coalition, 50 litre home coalition. It's getting consumers to understand how much it actually costs to heat your water through the central heating system or whatever it is, because then there might be a bit more of a connection when there's a sort of cost element in terms of the energy costs.
Exactly.
So we've kind of touched on this point, and this discussion could go on and on. So thank you so much. So this brings me then naturally to my final question, unfortunately. So, and you've touched on some of the things already, but what would utopia look like for you both in the water industry?
Utopia, generally we consider the meaning to be perfect, a perfect situation. And the reality is, I think, Lila, when we look at the environment we're in, both from a climate and an economic perspective, will we ever achieve that utopia? And I think we all know the answer is probably no. However, as a business, Grundfos believe that we're relentlessly ambitious in our desire to find challenges and solutions for some of the world's largest and most complex water challenges. We continue to do that as a global business. From my perspective as the lead for the UK and Ireland, I feel that we bring that local element of it to our customers and the people that we work with, and hopefully those stakeholders, the end users that benefit from those solutions that we bring to the market. So what does utopia look like? For me, it continues to be working very, very hard, very closely with the water companies, with consultants, the main contractors and the supply chain. We're both an innovator and part of the supply chain, so that's really important for us. And ultimately, we continue to look forward and strive for continuous improvement.
Great,
right?
Thank you.
For me personally, I think is one where everyone cares about protecting water and the environment as much as we do. That everyone is engaged in that purpose, in that agenda. No one wants flooding in their local area, in their local communities. No one wants water outages or poor water quality in their local communities and their local areas in this country. I think it's something that lots of people have taken for granted over the years. I think that these challenges will bring the agenda to a much more prominent place. We're seeing that already, I think, with pollution, for example. Lots of people are much more aware of pollution than they ever have been. I know that creates more issues for water companies, but ultimately, I think it's a good thing. Ultimately, that people are much more aware of how they're impacting their environment. I think I think utopia for me is when everyone's working together towards that objective, and we're able as an organisation to really help water companies and the broader consumer public to meet those objectives with our innovations, with our solutions, with our R&D, and that water utilities are much more proactive in saying to the supply chain, this is what we think we need, us saying this is what we think we have, and then working through that R&D process as a collaborative endeavour to make sure that we all achieve that objective right the way to consumers, so that we have a holistic ecosystem of people all going in the same direction. I think that's that's utopia for me.
Great.
That's a
Thank
lot.
you.
That's a lot.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's good. So, I mean, sort of staying on the theme of utopia, I mean, one of the key things I just wanted to sort of end with, obviously, Duncan, is that you're going to be convening a new focus group on asset management within British Water. And I see that as quite a key strategic piece of work, actually, that we could do to help support the industry to move forward. And that's all around ensuring asset health and making sure that, I suppose, the industry as a whole is aware of all the technologies and solutions. So how do you see the focus group kind of progressing and helping to contribute towards utopia? That's a big question.
Indeed. And arguably, when you and I had some discussions some months ago during one of your visits to our facilities here in Leighton Buzzard, we discussed and talked about asset management. And I guess broadly it's my fault that we're convening the group. What I was truly excited about was when we had the first meeting, how many people wanted to take part, how many people did take part, from the water company end users, consultants, main contractors, the supply chain. So for me, it clearly shows that there's an absolute desire to have that conversation and that topic around asset management. We know that you guys are working on the terms of reference, so I'm really excited to see how that will look, and really excited to start on that journey and see how what we do together collaboratively and collectively can lead to that utopia. I'm absolutely certain that it will bring about some really good topics of conversation. We'd like to think that it will influence the water companies, influence the supply chain as well.
Yeah.
I guess one concern, asset management is a huge topic. It's a massive topic. It's going to be really important how we forge those terms of reference to make sure that that we do focus in on some particular points and don't overstretch ourselves in what it is we want to achieve. But I'm delighted. It's great to continue our work and Grundfos's work with British Water. We always welcome yourself and your team to our facilities here.
Thank you.
And it's been great having you here as well today.
Well, thank you. That's a great natural end to this excellent thought leadership interview. So I really want to thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Duncan. And again, thank you for hosting me at your HQ.